All right. So today we have former Marine and UNI political science major and all around good guy, Jacob Harberts, with us on the podcast. Going to tell us how he got to UNI, why he chose political science as a major, what's he been up to, what's he doing with himself, and tell us all about it. So, Jacob, how the heck are you?
Hey, Dr. Renfro, thanks for having me. I'm doing well. I have been working at FEMA for a couple of years now, and I've actually I've recently moved to Colorado in 2020 during the pandemic when everything was crazy. I usually don't stay at home per my job description. I usually don't stay in one place too long, and I travel a lot, but because of COVID and everything, it's kind of kept me in one place for a while, longer than I've anticipated, that's for sure.
Do you, when you deploy, do you go anywhere in the territorial U.S. or how does that work?
Yep. Anywhere in the United States, including its territories, anywhere that has a federally declared disaster, which you see usually, all over the TV. Typically, you'll see more so in the South and in the East, but yeah, really anywhere in the country we can be sent.
What's the, I don't, because you're going to emergencies, and I want to be careful here because these are tragedies that involve, the worst day of a lot of people's lives that you're routinely going to and providing assistance for. But as far as just being a young person that's traveling, is there a particularly memorable place that you went that, despite the emergency, was just a different place that you've never been to that you enjoyed, or is everything just awful all the time?
So it depends on the disaster. I haven't had a whole lot of disasters. I've been trying to stay with the ones I get put on just for the sake of continuity. But the first one I was sent to actually in 2019 was Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I didn't know a whole lot about Tulsa, and it was a surprisingly nice little place. I mean, it's, if you're a young professional, it's a good place to start. But I think the most interesting thing just about Tulsa was just really learning the dynamics between that urban community, that Tulsa, that big city, and then just in that immediate area, those small rural areas, and seeing the difference of how a disaster impacts those two different dynamics was probably the most interesting thing, especially in Oklahoma, because it's a pretty politically active state. You have a lot of different ideals flowing around and a lot of different things to consider when you're there. So I think so far that's been the one that I really lean on, but there I have heard horror stories from other folks who get deployed to places that are in much worse condition. I was deployed to a flood from 2019, but you hear about instances like Puerto Rico in 2017, where government employees are sleeping on cruise ships that are in the harbor because there's nowhere else to stay. Everything is pretty much leveled, and that sounds like it's not as enjoyable for folks. But sometimes you're lucky. You get to go to Hawaii, or sometimes you get to go to Florida. Nice places like that.
Yeah. Have you gotten to go to Hawaii? Or?
I haven't for work. I took a vacation there last summer and it was amazing, but I have not got to go for work. They tell me you have to be a little bit, you got to be a little higher ranking to get deployed there, unfortunately.
Well, Hawaii also has a hell of a good state emergency management thing, as you probably are aware of. But except for that time, they sent an emergency text on the island saying there was nuclear incoming.
Yeah, good test at least.
Yeah, was not good. Where'd you stay? Waikiki area, or?
On Maui, actually, I stayed there on just the south side of that island. Very quiet. I told myself I wanted a vacation, not a trip, so I kept all of the going around the island very minimal and just stuck to the beach area and just took some time to not think.
Yeah, well, I think that's a wise decision, especially summer of 20.
21 last summer. This
Yeah,
most
okay.
recent
So last summer was the first summer that people were taking a deep breath, no pun intended, in the pandemic. Because remember, that was at the point where you had your vaccines and everything
Right.
going down before it came back up again. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to, hopefully this summer will be enjoyable one. But now, to just change gears a little bit, Jacob, tell us where you're from and how you got to UNI.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm originally from a small little place outside of Grundy Center, about 30 minutes away from Cedar Falls. All my life, I had been going, to and from Cedar Falls just because I was close to it, area to get
Cedar,
quick
was Cedar
groceries.
Falls Cedar Falls the big city?
Yeah, yeah, it really was. I mean, that's where you went to, anything that needed to happen that you couldn't do in Grundy, you had to go to Cedar Falls or Alou for that. So all my life, I've been driving right by UNI, and really in high school, I was always envisioned myself as a military guy. It was like, I'm probably not going to worry about college, don't need this. But then when I finally did join the Marine Corps, they really only had slots for reservists. So I chose that reserve route where I was initially made a welder and metal fabricator, which eventually got me back home, after about a year of training. And I found a job in Cedar Falls as a welder. And I think I was working that job for about a year, year and a half, when one day I remember I became frustrated with what I was doing, and I just broke the part that I was working on. And I said that this wasn't the life for me. I wasn't going to do this forever. And I actually started applying at colleges, Hawkeye particularly is where I was looking. And I actually had a friend who was going to UNI. I said, why don't you just give it a try? Try UNI, see what happens. The worst, you just don't get in. You try again later. Maybe take gen eds at Hawkeye and move over to UNI. And when I did apply, I was accepted. And then I didn't really have a path. I didn't know exactly what I wanted. I was leaning more towards teaching at first, and I thought maybe a little bit about criminology and sociology because I seem to have had an interest in there. And it was actually, I believe it was the 2015. I think it was your Middle Eastern Studies class where I had officially kind of heard that term political science, where I understood that what political science really meant wasn't about elections and campaigns. It was actually about the interest of others and how that power dynamic and vying for that power really impacts us in all levels of government through every country.
Yeah, for sure. And that's always nice to hear. Uh, so you started out when you enrolled as a freshman. What year was that?
That would have been 2015, I believe, the spring of 2015.
And then you were sort of taking elective courses, maybe, you were vacillating, you weren't sure what you were going to do. And then you just happened to take an elective that sparked your interests. And then
Right. Yeah.
did you declare your major then shortly thereafter?
Yes, I did. I took one more class. I think it was your international relations course, and a few other political science classes. And then it was after about midway through that semester, I was like, I think this is it. I think this is what I want to do. And I even was I looked a little bit into the catalog and saw that you could actually add on a lot of another major and some minors quite easily with the political science, since its scope is so large.
Well, that's exactly right. That's one of the nice things about this department is, did you end up doubling in anything like public admin or anything?
Yeah, I double majored political science and global studies, and then I double minored in geography and international relations.
Yeah, see, and that's a really nice combo. And for the viewers, it's nice for them to get a sense of how marketable this makes you. Not just for things like everybody thinks, law school, grad school, and for a lot of people, maybe I don't want to go to law school or grad school. I want to join the private sector or the public sector. And the breadth that the department has, from international to local,
Right.
and everything in between, is pretty special for you and I. And as a result, you start looking pretty good on a resume when you're going to apply for these big and prestigious, really, federal agencies.
Mm-hmm.
And that you've been at now for, when did you get, I remember you got hired on with FEMA shortly after you graduated.
Yeah, it was my official hire date was August 4th of 2019, which was, I graduated in May of 2019. So basically had a short summer and went right to it.
You're, I'm sure, making a lot of people very jealous right now. But the thing to do is just what you did, which is buckle down. And I'm sure you applied for many things. And
yeah, absolutely.
And you can't just sort of put all your eggs in one basket, because especially with the federal government, you never know if they're going to do a hiring freeze or a hiring splurge. It all depends on funding and fiscal years and actually having a budget. When I was working for the federal government, there was a time where you didn't even know your budget past the current fiscal year. And then if that's the case, then how do you even form a strategy?
Right.
China talks about 50-year plans,
Oh.
but we can't even talk about, a 2-year plan.
Yeah.
You never know
No.
what's going to be cut. So that's what I always tell people is to not get frustrated or, not get intimidated with the federal government. There's a lot of paperwork, right? And the application process is rigorous.
It is.
But if you just are patient, and of course your military background taught you nothing if not the importance of the concept of hurry up and wait.
Oh yeah.
Hurry up and wait.
Absolutely.
And once you just accept, right, you got to accept it and it will work out. I always tell people there's no point getting too stressed here, because what happens is, of course, then you just get paralyzed insofar as there's too much stress,
Right.
and then people fail to actually take any action, and then it makes everything worse. So I think you set a good example here. Many of our majors have gone on and done great things, and you're one of them. So you're at UNI, you're sort of a local guy. You take some classes. This is what's so nice about electives. A lot of times students, even when I was a student, there's a tendency to think, well, why are they making me take all these dumb electives?
Right.
Well, the reason that every college everywhere throughout human history has done this is because most 18-year-old freshmen do not know what they want to do, and they don't even know what they don't know. So how do you even like the doors will open for you, but you have to even know the door is there to knock, right?
Absolutely.
And so by forcing these sorts of opportunities, electives, students can radically alter their course,
Oh, absolutely. Which is exactly what happened to me. I had no idea what half of these things were, and I wasn't even fully sure what my interests were. And it honestly, I think there's a lot of folks who make that, not, I wouldn't say it's just that rash decision to be like, I know what I want, and then they jump right into it, and then they don't really understand what the bigger picture is, or maybe that they're into that field of study as much as they thought.
Well, that's exactly right. And then it just, people need to look long term. Where are you going to be? Everybody thinks, well, I got to get my paycheck by August. If I'm graduating in May, not everybody's that lucky, but you got to have a little patience, because otherwise what happens is you wake up and you're 30 years old and you're in some cubicle in a job that you don't even like in the first place, but it's just because you took the first thing that came along. So that's why we try to have fun in political science and try to offer people just a wide variety of different options for study. So tell me a little bit why FEMA was on your short list. I'm sure you had others, but why was FEMA up there? And what is it that appealed about working for that particular agency?
Yeah. So initially, after not, coming into my senior year, I was thinking about what I want to do in a career, and there were a couple different ideas I had. And of course, taking a lot of your courses and just my general interest in the geopolitical scene, I was thinking more into the intelligence agencies or something along those lines that puts me in a position to be dealing with the strategic side of things rather than the shorter term or the tactical or anything of that nature. I wanted that big picture global idea. But as I started looking, I started progressing through, really, it was really I think my junior and senior year, I started to almost in real time feel like I was seeing the consequences of climate change occurring. In 2017, there was two massive hurricanes that absolutely destroyed, parts of this country. There was floods, there's fires. It seemed almost like a doomsday scenario. And I started thinking about really where our efforts should be, directed, and particularly my efforts. And I thought, well, geez, this climate change seems a whole lot worse than just about any other war scenario that we face. I mean, it's happening today, and it's very it's dangerous to a lot of people. And I actually when I was working at that welding job, of course, I was a part-time student there. I actually had a guy I worked with whose sister worked in FEMA, and she was actually looking for people because they were on one of those hiring splurges like the government. FEMA apparently a couple of years ago determined that they were going to need a lot more folks for the the challenges ahead. As climate change progresses and gets worse, these disasters are becoming, significantly larger than we've ever seen before. I think in 2005 we had seen like $1 billion disaster, and now any major hurricane basically is $1 billion disaster. You'll have, strange one-offs, from floods that will turn into $1 billion disasters. And this is getting worse and worse. And as I'm coming in through my senior year, not having really any luck with those intelligence agencies, seeing that there's a lot of, masters, you gotta have your master's degree, you've got to have X, Y, Z in your record. You're in a very
You
competitive group of
you can't
folks.
trust those intelligence folks.
You can't always, that's for sure. So, but it was getting to the point where it really was starting to become crunch time, as far as what are you going to do with your future. And I started studying for the GRE, not sure how I was going to do that. And then finally, when I had, talked with my friend that I worked with, my coworker, he had said that FEMA was really looking for a lot of folks, and they were really actually quite open to the idea of bringing in, entry level people from graduates, colleges. There's a ton of fields that FEMA could pull from. I mean, really anything: business, environmental, political science, policy. I mean, you name it, FEMA probably has something for you to do in there. So it was just a really kind of one of those things where I was like, dang, this sounds like a good way to actually put my efforts towards helping with this, climate change and in my small part of it, and actually being able to do all the other things that I enjoy, which was traveling, and being able to pay off those great student loan debts and everything else that comes with it. So
Yeah,
that was
well,
what kind of led me that way.
that's good, Jacob. Thank you. Let's see. What else? What do you have any sort of advice? Let's do this. I would say advice in the positive sense. So things that you would tell potential students to do, and also any cautionary notes, like words of wisdom, things that you didn't do that you wish you had, any sort of that retrospective old guy advice that you can pass down to the younger students that might be watching.
Yeah, I can tell you for sure the one thing I would do as a college student, if I could go back again, is to travel, to take advantage of any opportunity that you can travel through the university or any other means that you can travel during that time. It seems that I haven't progressed too far into my life, but it seems that when you get a career, it becomes much more difficult to do these things. And college is kind of this window of opportunity to actually get out. In the contacts that you make, the friendships you make, especially ones across the world, they really, come back and they seem to apply themselves, or they seem to almost give you an insight later on in your life, or provide an opportunity later on in life that you didn't really expect. You just kind of made those friendships, and then 3-4 years down the road, something comes up between you and that friend that actually, drives you to a new point in your life, or gives you new perspective on things. So that's my piece of advice to anybody who's here, is to make sure you travel. And cautionary advice, that's a good one. So let's see. I would say the cautionary thing would be is don't be afraid to really dive in to what you're interested in. And I know that with grades and what the professors ask you to do as far as submitting paperwork, there's a lot of folks who just like, I'm just trying to do this before 9 o'clock on Friday so I can get to the bars and do these things or whatever. You just don't want to do it. But it's incredible what you can learn when you actually take some time for yourself and dive into a topic that you're a little bit more interested in. And if you don't do that, I think that you're shortchanging your college experience, because the professor and the institution itself can only teach you so much. The rest of it falls onto your shoulders and is really about your curiosity and willingness to learn. So make sure you take that time to look into things that you're interested about or don't know as much about, because it will help a lot in your life for sure.
I think those are outstanding words of wisdom, and I would, certainly second both the importance of travel. I know, the most common reason people say that they're not traveling, of course, is the expense.
Mhm.
But I think you'll find, especially if you can get a study abroad type things, that at the end of the day, it's worth it. I mean,
Yeah.
just, you know, just do it.
Yeah, it really is.
And really the importance of, and I think you're right on about just taking the time to invest yourself in your own education. When
Mhm.
you get assigned that book, you can skim it, you can half-ass it, and maybe that will be fine. I could, as far as a grade, but you're also ripping yourself off from being exposed to and grappling with the ideas uh, that are you're being exposed to. Now, that doesn't mean you have to accept the ideas or anything else. It just means, oh, I never thought of this. And then you say, huh, maybe I'll change my mind. Or you can say, huh, screw that. It doesn't, that part doesn't matter. It's the idea of actually trying to wrestle with hard concepts that maybe, if you're just a little boy from out in Grundy Center somewhere you never thought of before, right? Next thing
Right.
you know, you're thinking about things you never even thought of before, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So that's all the great part of the college experience, and something that I think the political science department here is very strong at. So I think that we'll wrap it up, Jacob, and I would thank you again for your time. Uh, and this has been a fun conversation. It's always good to catch up with former students. And so thank you, and we'll see you later.
Thank you, Dr. Renfro. Appreciate being here.
All right.